There's a new 6-part podcast that's going to have you on the edge of your seat as 48 Hours takes on a deadly mystery.
So we are joined this morning by correspondent Peter Van Sant with more on the new podcast series. Peter, good morning. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, John. Hey, Courtney.
Okay, so this story is intriguing to say the least.
Right.
There's murder, there's a love triangle.
They're dogs.
Yeah, dogs. If you can give us
two-legged and four-legged dogs in this case. Trust me.
If you can give us like the thumbnail synopsis.
So Mark Stover is an incredibly talented dog trainer to the stars. He's based in Anacortes, Washington, north of Seattle. Eddie Vedder of Pearl Jam had his dog trained by him. One day, the statuesque 6-foot-tall heiress to a wine empire in Washington state, Linda Updike, walks in. She has a dog that she'd like to have trained. These two start a professional relationship. Eventually, they decide to go into business together. They create a dog training business that's a $1 million a year enterprise, and get married after 11 years, knowing each other for 11 years. But after that occurred, according to Linda, Stover became obsessive, controlling. She saw this dark side. Sometimes people would wander onto the property, and one time Stover pulled out a gun and threatened to shoot them if they didn't get off the property. So she decides to get a divorce. That's when all hell breaks loose. Stover is stalking her, harassing her, threatening her, leaving voicemails. We've got those. So she flees. She goes to Winthrop, Washington, on the east side of the mountains, and he follows her there. There's security camera video in the middle of the night. You know, that body heat type. It's black and white image of him trying to get into the house. So she hires a guy named Michael Oakes, who's a security and firearms expert, to turn her house into a fortress and to teach her self-defense. Those two fall in love. Now we have a love triangle: the heiress, the bodyguard, and the dog trainer, who then in 2009, one of his employees goes into the house, smells the strong odor of bleach, sees blood, sees his dog has a bloody face. The dog, it turns out, goes to the vet, x-rays. There's 3 bullets in the dog's head. It's still alive. Mark Stover's body is gone. Detectives go there and they say, we got ourselves a murder. And folks, that's just the beginning of this story. I got to interview exclusively Linda Updike on 3 different occasions. Yeah. I talked to her before law enforcement did. I got to Michael Oakes, and we had an interview prior to the trial in this case. So we finally can dig super deep into this, and it's a wild ride.
So when you're looking at something like this, as you mentioned, it's a love triangle. You've got law enforcement involved, other things, but there's a whole person who's a huge part of the triangle that's missing and still missing, and no one knows where or why, right?
Right.
So how do you? Yeah.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Where do you start with the digging, because you're missing a vital piece of the story?
Well, we interview Vicki Simmons, Mark's sister, who tells the story of his life. He grew up in poverty. His father died when he was 18 years old, and then he had a sister who died. He was thrown out of high school. His life was very, very difficult until someone once gave him a gift of a German Shepherd puppy named Gunter, and he fell in love with it. And all of a sudden, he over the course of the next few years, he became a dog trainer, and it exploded into this business. The stuff that we have in this are so many moments in which we couldn't put into the 48 Hours show that we did on this. And the podcast, I say this is the movie version of this incredible story. And we get into so much fascinating detail. But at times, as you go through this podcast, you'll be scratching your head. And the big question, Linda Updike, the heiress, what role did she play? Did she really not have any prior knowledge that the man who was living with her and she was in love with was going to go over to Anacortes, Washington, and kill the man who had been harassing her? How is it that Michael Oakes, when he was at Mark Stover's house and an employee saw him at the distance at the top of a driveway, he was wearing Stover's signature broad hat? Wow. How would Michael Oakes know to wear that hat if Linda Updike didn't tell him to? That's
so
the question
juicy.
I've always had. And I press her on that. And she denies. And you just have to hear her voice because you're really going to get to know this woman. And Michael Oakes, I challenge that guy left and right. It's a fascinating story, and this was just a thrill of my career at 48 to be able to put this together into 6 parts in this podcast. Train
Wow.
to Kill, and I think you'll really enjoy it.
It is called Train to Kill. It is available where you get your podcast. Peter Van Sant, thank you, sir.
Juicy
Hey, thank
stuff.
you guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Peter.